We're starting the regular business meeting of the Commission on Police Practices. It's 4:30 on Wednesday, July 3rd. Thank you everyone for joining us. All right, so let's do the roll call. Ms. Condi.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and do the roll call of the commission. We have Chair Gloria Tran. First Vice Chair Dennis Brown.
Here.
Thank you. Second Vice Chair Doug Cates. Commissioner Aguilar is excused. Commissioner Armentrout. Thank you. Commissioner Benitez. Commissioner Byer. Commissioner Hansen is excused. Commissioner Chatsky.
Here.
Commissioner Diaz. He's not here yet. Commissioner Flores. Not here yet. Commissioner Griffin Jones. Thank you. Commissioner Harvey is excused. Commissioner Hilbert. Commissioner Honore. Commissioner Justice. Commissioner Mendoza. Commissioner Molnas. Commissioner Rodriguez. Wonderful, thank you. And that concludes roll call.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's look at the minutes from our last meeting of June 18th. Are there any suggested amendments? Yes, Commissioner Hilbert.
It's not so much for an edit, but I'd like to ask a little more description on some of the public comments. Several of them just say public comment on the topic, which I think might need a little bit more.
We discussed that with our outside counsel, and he said to keep it as brief and just put the topic. But thank you for that, and we'll see if we can add maybe a word or two. But yeah, that was discussed. But I appreciate it. Any other suggestions, comments? Okay, do I have an Commissioner Hilbert? Do I have a second? Okay, Commissioner Justice, sorry. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, where is my, oh, there he is. Well, now we get to, we have been waiting 6 months to do this. Thank you. Do we have any non-agenda public comments?
Yes, we have one in-person non-agenda public comment. Peter, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
First time here, guys, so I really appreciate you guys welcoming me here. I basically just had one comment. You hear me now? There you go. I'm sorry about that. Like I said, first time. I'm not a rapper or anything like that. Please excuse me, guys. My main concern, I just got a ticket literally right here on West Pan American Road, and regarding the one-way signs that weren't posted up there, we got those taken care of now. They were dismissed before trial, but my only concern is the no unauthorized vehicles beyond this point. It's slightly tilted to the direction coming from, I believe it's, I wouldn't even be able to be, I think it's South Pan American, I believe. It's right, the direction coming from the castle coming this way, if you have the bathrooms on the right-hand side. They're slightly tilted to the degree where that opposing traffic can see it, but the one, if you're gonna make a left onto the one-way into Pan American Road, it's hardly visible. I did get a ticket for it. I tried to contest it in court. I ended up losing the case, but I believe, I guess that concludes my time.
Thank you. This concludes in-person public comment. We have no virtual public comment on non-agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Obeid. I was so excited to go to the next item. I kind of almost forgot non-public agenda. We've waited 6 months for this moment, and I get to turn it over to our incredible first vice chair, Dr. Dennis Brown.
Thank you. The other day, I had the privilege of introducing Paul, and he has come aboard. And one of the things that you need to know about Paul drinks a lot of coffee. You will never see him without coffee. So this boy is white. But we want to welcome him as our new executive director. And I'm sure that we're going to enjoy his presence and purpose here with our commission. So without further ado, let me introduce Mr. Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brown. Is it okay if I just stay seated? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, thank you. Thanks to all of you for your patience. I know it's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited to be here. I will tell you, I just have a couple of minutes, but what I'd like to say is that this commission, in my opinion, the reason I want to work here is it has been formed, it has been created with exactly what I was petitioning for in a previous job with the county, very similar role. It's exactly what I was wanting. The case review component with the independent investigations, the auditing component, the policy analyst, the community outreach person, the general counsel, all of these things, this was planned and put together very well, in my opinion. So I want to thank everyone, and I know we're going to hear from some folks who played a role in getting this commission to be what it is today. So for me, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm excited about the diversity that I see in this commission. I haven't really seen that as much, but I see it here with this commission. The cabinet who I've interacted with over the last week that I've been here is fearless, in my opinion, very proactive, and obviously wants to get things done and get things moving. I want to thank the staff. The staff. I think they're, what I've seen just in the 1 week that I've been here, they're obviously cohesive. They get the purpose of what we're supposed to be doing. They've held this down internally for the last 8 months, really. Without the permanent, with all due respect to Dr. Scarborough, which we're going to talk about. I'm going to say something about you in a minute. But the staff, so thank you all very much. I look forward to continuing to work with and learn from you. What I wanted to do is just kind of lay out my plan. I also want to thank, obviously, those commissioners on the ad hoc committee who got me here, right? So, Mr. Honore, Ms. Dr. Momot, Mr. Justice, Dr. Brown, played a role too, to be blunt. They did. They played a role for two council people specifically, Von Wilford and Campillo. So I want to thank them for their role and their verbalized support of this commission. So over the next few weeks, what I'd like to do is the next week I have one more week with Danelle Scarborough. I'm doing everything I can to download from her. It's going to be big shoes for me to fill with all the city knowledge and everything that she's done to get us to this point. I'm doing everything I can to keep up with that. My hope over the next couple of weeks is basically a listening tour. Alina is reaching out to you folks because I want to meet with each of you individually at whatever way is convenient for you. Obviously, I want to meet with the staff. I'll be doing that. I will be meeting with Pete Wall. I know that Alina is reaching out and doing that as well. I want to get out into the community. Yasmin is working to get me out to meet with specific community groups, and then obviously internal affairs and the union whenever possible. So I know I'll be working with the chair to delineate roles. Like now that we have a full-time executive director, what is my role? What is my role, and what is the cabinet's role, and what is the commission's role? So these are things that we'll be working on. We're going to start working on. We actually already have started with. And finally, I want to say, if any of you have my work email address, it may be wrong. So I want to give you my correct work email address. It was changed. When it was initially issued, it wasn't the right one. But now, and I'm going to say it publicly because also members of the community, whoever's listening can also email me. It's PRParker, PRParker@sandiego.gov. So again, I want to thank all of you for getting me here, and I look forward to working with and learning from each of you. And don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll give you all my cell phone number via email. So
Do we have any public comment, Ms. Obeid, about this agenda item?
We have no in-person public comment on this item, and we have one person join us virtually, and staff will support with unmuting this person. They'll have 1 minute.
Oh, go ahead, Owen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tazeen Nizam, and I serve as the Executive Director of CARE San Diego. Peaceful protest is the most American civic act, and so is the right to practice my faith. My right to practice.
We're on the introduction of the new executive director. Are you speaking on that item?
No, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought I moved on to the next agenda item and quit too much of a hurry.
Thank you.
Apologies.
This concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Obi. Any discussion, questions of Mr. Parker from the commission? Commissioner?
It's an interesting turn of events. We lost our interim executive director, Charmaine Mosley, to the county of San Diego and county of LA County. And now we've gotten you from San Diego County. So I thought that was kind of an interesting series of events. And just a welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. Look forward to working with you.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Okay, so now before we move forward, Dr. Scarborough, will you please join us up here? Alina, do you want to join us? Okay, good. All right, we just want to thank Dr. Scarborough for her 6 months of work. We don't know where we would be without you. We were doing our best with no executive director, and then you kindly and graciously stepped up to fill that role, and boy, did you fill that role. And boy, was it a work. And we just wanted to thank you. It's bittersweet. We're happy to have Paul. We're too bad we can't have both of you, but you have a life. And we just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for us and for what you've taught us and worked us through. So thank you.
So now, on behalf of the Office of the Commission on Police Practices, we would like to thank you for all of the work that you've done for the commission and staff. You've been a wonderful piece of our puzzle. We are where we are now because of you and your leadership. I know we have you a little bit longer, but even though you may not be present in the office, your energy will continue to inspire us. We will always aim to uphold the work ethic you brought into this role, and your leadership and guidance have shaped our team in so many ways, and we'll truly miss you.
You sign the card, you can sign it after the meeting.
Bittersweet and such an honor and a pleasure. I loved being a public servant, and so it was a no-brainer. Out of the total clear blue, Doug Cates called and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" I was like, "Okay, sure." And should have asked more questions. Got a little bit more detail. And I love the work of public service, and it was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we'll continue the meeting now. So we have the San Diego police protest policy. It was a holdover from last meeting when we wanted more community input. And so we are going to start with public comment. Ms. Opie.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have two in-person public comments. The first is Kelly. Kylie, apologies. You have you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
I want to take time to thank the commission, for its work on this, document, on the draft document. I am the director of the Legal Observer Program in San Diego County, for the National Lawyers Guild, so I'm kind of all over the thing. Thank you for making sure that we are, well, frankly speaking, safe at these things. These are kind of contentious
Very
events.
shallow, I know.
I'm sorry. The other thing I'd like to bring attention to is section 9, officer identification requirements. I do think that it's incredibly important that this be pushed as hard as it can be, because to be perfectly honest, we don't know if they're telling the truth when they give an ID number. We will be the ones asking for that number, and I don't know if they're going to be telling the truth, and there's nothing to stop them from not. According to protest policy, they should have their body worn cameras in vent mode. They very often do not. It's just, you know, the work that we do as legal observers is we're there for the rubber meets the road when these things actually happen and when these things actually happen. It's good to have protections in place. The best protection to come in place is knowing who these officers are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kate. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Kate Gavin, and as you know, I'm with Women Occupy San Diego and the National Lawyers Guild. And now that I have 2 minutes, I don't even have 2 minutes to say, and you always cut me off. Anyway, I want to thank the committee for the really good work that you did on this recommendation. You took input that Kylie and I both provided, and as well as the prior input from the ACLU and Mogul and other people. And these are really good recommendations. But the only additional comment I would have is there was some discussion about having a community meeting. And I do think it's really important to have a community meeting after you hear from the SDPD, because I think the community needs to hear what the cops are going to say to the recommendations that come from the commission and the community. So when you talk about all of that and the timing and making that public, I think that's really important. I also have a little concern about having what you're calling community meetings at your regular meetings, because they don't get publicized. You can see there's only 2 of us here. There's a lot of people interested in a lot of these things. And there were a lot of people at the community meeting when we talked about the executive director. So I would just hope that you would think a little bit, things that are really important, like the protest stop, you're having a separate meeting, but it still happens to be on a, you know, a kind of weeknight, which is difficult. So I would just ask that you consider that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Griffin, for being so intentional with your public outreach regarding today's meeting. I'm here as a citizen, but also as a former chair of the Citizens Advisory Board for Police and Community Relations. And I think that the topic that you all are looking at today is critically important. We know that we are in very fraught and tense times, and we have seen in San Diego County prior incidents of how policing institutions respond to civil protests, and it's really critical that policy reflect a movement away from what is consistently identified as non-lethal weapons for the purpose of managing crowds and protesters. We have seen how the use of said non-lethal weapons has had significant medical impact on individuals who they've come into contact with. And also the matter of officer identification is critical for the purpose of accountability. especially given that we know, we are now seeing cross accountability measures across our various, policing institutions here in San Diego. So I thank you for this issue and offering some, valid and constructive, recommendations.
Thank you. This concludes in-person comments. Now we're gonna move on to virtual public comment. The first speaker is Jeanine. I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to speak. Please unmute. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for the time to speak, and I really appreciate all the work that this commission does, and ensuring oversight over SDPD and ensuring that everyone in San Diego feels safe. I'm calling today as a member of the Palestinian Youth Movement. We've been mobilizing peaceful protests in the last 9 months, and have felt safe and secure throughout it. With exception of some of the most recent protests at UCSD, in which SDPD, the Sheriff's Department arrived in riot gear as well as UCPD. And I share that. I know you all overlook SDPD, but I share that because of the concern around how riot gear escalates the presence of riot gear escalates situations with police at peaceful protests. And secondly, I wanted to speak on the note in this section around concerns of force or opportunities for the use of force, specifically that sitting and locking arms consisting arrest, and that compounded if anyone was sitting in or locking arms, that SDPD can use chemical agents against resisting arrest, which really endangers everyone in the vicinity, and that chemical agents should not be used for people who are practicing their First Amendment activities, even if it were to be considered quote unquote resisting arrest. And that in general, we've seen that presence of chemical deterrents, riot gear, etc., all escalate a situation unnecessarily when people are often coming together to practice the First Amendment right and speak on an issue near and dear to them. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Moving on to Lily. I'm gonna allow you to speak. Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lily. I am a resident here of San Diego and a member of the Jewish Voice for Peace chapter here in San Diego. Our group has been mobilizing and supporting mobilizations for the past several years, and especially over the past 9 months. And like the speakers before me, I do share some concerns about how specifically the Sheriff's Department has showed up and really escalated situations in the past several months in particular. And I appreciate the opportunity to review SDPD's policies. And I know that there's a lot to touch on, but I think some of the really important points that weren't directly or that maybe need further clarification. There seems to be a lot of commentary on riots and on what constitutes violence without clear definitions of what either of these mean. This opens up to the use of force and use of violence by SDPD if there's not a clear definition of what constitutes a riot or violent assembly. And there's constant use of language of threat of violence. And I think that this needs to be further expanded upon to have clearer definitions so that there's not as much vagueness and as much discretion that can be used by SDPD. I'm also really concerned about the allowance, as other speakers have mentioned, for the use of chemical weapons. But even beyond that, it specifies that batons can be used for peaceful protests. And I think that in no situation should batons be used for peaceful protesters. We see again and again that there are violent means of suppressing nonviolent protest, and nonviolence should be met with nonviolence. So I again appreciate this opportunity and think that there's still some more work that can be done to ensure that the SDPD will not be using even non-lethal weapons, batons, or chemical weapons against peaceful protesters, and that there's clearer definitions around what
Lee, this
constitutes
concludes your
violence.
time. Thank you. Tazeen, I'm gonna allow you to speak. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I hope you are all keeping cool inside. My name is Tazeen Nizam, and I serve as the Executive Director of Council of American Islamic Relations, the San Diego office. As a civil rights office, we receive many complaints from all across the county. So this is addressing not just San Diego PD, but some of the complaints that we've received from other parts of the county as well. As you all know, that peaceful protest is the most American civic act that anyone can do. And also, my right to practice my faith is something that is guaranteed by the First Amendment. Recently, with police practices, we have noticed that police officers have made women take off their hijab during arrest, or even when they come in for licensing. The anti-Islamic rhetoric is just heightened. We see that police practices are not allowing communities of faith to feel safe while they protest. So we ask that the clerk include language in police practices that are allowing for hijabs to be worn during arrest or even while their people are protesting. There is a big gender bias that happens during our protest, and when arrests happen, we ask that culturally competent practices be really established when police is dealing with the Muslim community and other communities of faith as well. We request that we include language so that the faith communities are empowered to exercise their civil liberties, to be able to protest. And then you ensure that religious garb is allowed for women when they are in custody, or even when they come into a police station to ask for any kind of permits or any kind of licensing. And CLERB has the opportunity to do that while we are at the pivotal point of writing these policies. So we request that we be included in this process and language be allowed to protect communities of color and communities of faith. Thank you.
This concludes your time. Last speaker, Sara Farouk. I'm gonna allow you to speak. You have 2 minutes. Sorry, 1 moment. Go ahead.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Farouk. Thank you all so much for hosting this conversation and for allowing members of the public to be able to give input. So I represent the San Diego for Palestine Coalition. We are a coalition representing several organizations, faith-based, youth-led, members of different kinds of communities here in San Diego County. And I wanted to provide some feedback and comments on the policies that are proposed here by your commission. And so I wanted to touch on a few of them. So under the section of planning for First Amendment activities, I wanted to highlight that when you're speaking on item I, what will the composition of the group be? It's important to question, add a question about attendees. Are there going to be families, children in the crowd? A lot of these protests that we're seeing have families attending, members of the public that bring out, other folks in the community to attend. And so we want to make sure it's a safe environment for them. Elderly folks in the group. So any information on that will be really helpful for us to note. In talking about spontaneous events, I think it's really important for us to highlight what we mean. I know other folks have pointed this out as well when we say criminal activity, because a lot of these are just First Amendment events, and we shouldn't be treating them the same way that we say, we treat criminal, quote unquote, criminal activities, because that, prohibits the rights of folks to practice free speech and their First Amendment rights in a safe manner. It's really critical for us to actually under department issued ID, know who the folks are, have their first and last name, because it's hard to know that information just by looking at them. And then just making sure that we highlight understanding the crowd that we're working with. It's really critical, and not just saying that they are a criminal crowd or doing criminal activity, because that automatically is going to place folks under dangerous circumstances that are not safe for them or for anybody in the crowd. So I think it's really critical for us to highlight those pieces and make sure there's clarity on everybody's end in terms of those definitions. Thank you.
This concludes the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes public comment on this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Ovid, and thank you to all of our speakers. So I'm going to turn this over now to Commissioner Hilbert and see if he's made a couple of the changes that we discussed at last meeting. And are there any that you picked up from this meeting so we can move forward on this?
Yeah, so I was trying to take some type of fast, like, to take a lot of notes there, but one of the other things is Yasmin had sent a PDF of notes that she received from the community as well. So I want to quickly kind of go over those because it does address several of the things that people had raised. And then we did make a few edits to the memo based on the conversations we had at our last commission meeting. So high level, I think the definitions, the idea was add definition for violence, civil disobedience, criminal conduct. And then I think for legal observers or people that are part of the purpose-related activity, a group provided marshal or monitor, and then also what a violent act is. I think one of the questions that was also raised here was kind of the definition of riots is kind of used loosely there. So we wanted to really kind of discuss how the threat of the violence is being assessed by the department. What's the minimum number of people? This is the question. What's the minimum number of people it takes to create a riot? I think that's really more of an information item. We need to consult with the department to find out what their answer is, and then we can make recommendations based upon that. The unlawful assembly, the one thing we've already received information back from them is the way the department wrote this is they use the California legal statute. So that's why it says, a violent, boisterous, or tumultuous manner. One of our concerns we raised before is we wanted to make sure that people had the ability to even be loud at a protest, and that in itself isn't a reason to say this is an unlawful assembly. So the department did actually follow our suggestions, and they did add at the very end of that one definition that essentially there has to be an immediate threat of violence, and assembly that is boisterous or tumultuous alone does not establish a violation of this statute. So they did listen to us on that one, but I think we can get a little bit more clarity on the riot piece. One of the other things that we had already talked about, but one of the sections was, has the department previously worked with the organizers, have fire enforcement activities been lawful? As we talked about in the last meeting, we want to have that taken out altogether because we feel that every protest activity needs to be looked at individually and on the circumstances that happen on that time. So it doesn't matter if a previous one was peaceful or a previous one was unlawful. We feel like that's not relevant. And then I think one of the questions I think Yasmin, you added from public having conversation was, we want to add a question about the attendees of a protest activity. Are the families there? Are there children, elderly? So I think that's can sometimes change the situation a little bit. And then the department issued ID is obviously something the department has their perspectives. I think we all feel strongly that just saying, hey, I'm ID number 1, 2, 3, 4 is probably not sufficient. So my intent, at least in the commission votes to do it differently, I would push back on this and ask that we want to have names included in that as well. Spontaneous event. The question was approaching First Amendment events the same way as a criminal activity is dangerous. So I'd like to see them have a little more clarity on exactly how they respond to a criminal activity within a protest-related activity. One of the questions was, if there's 100 people there and 2 people are causing a problem, obviously take care of the 2 people, but not everybody else is there. One of the comments we also received was, it basically says the officers serving professionally exposed to the content of opinions being expressed regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. We also wanted to say, or one of the suggestions was to add, regardless of the crowd's opinions about law enforcement. Obviously, sometimes people are very unhappy with how the police respond, and I think that's an important thing to add in there. This was a comment we got. This was about the occasional individual engaged in criminal conduct that's not reflective of the larger group. The concern there was that could result in officers potentially targeting a group organizer, someone who's perhaps leading that protest activity. So we wanted to kind of get that in there and then again have that definition of criminal misconduct. For the unlawful assembly piece, I think again, some of these things are not recommendations. We need to go back to the department and get their feedback on it. But what's the percentage kind of for the threat of the number of people
nature of lawful act in the crowd. The question was, what's the percentage of this number compared to the whole crowd? And that's what I was saying earlier, if there's 3 people out of 100, then obviously deal with that. There's a couple other pieces about determination of sufficient police resources. We wanted to kind of get more information from them on how they're defining that and what it looks like. And then the concern that we heard from the community was that this could potentially result in officers targeting organizers of the group. And we just want to get more information before we can provide information back on that one. But the other thing was officers have to communicate a dispersal order in a reasonable way. And the question was, what's a reasonable way? We actually already had made this recommendation in the past, and the department at the time, and this was almost a year ago, I think, they basically said that the law doesn't currently state what reasonable is, and so SDPD is currently unwilling to define that themselves. For example, when we made recommendations on what a dispersal order is, we were saying you need to make that dispersal order, with at least a minute in between dispersal orders, and you need to make it repeatedly, and you also need to have some behind the scenes to perhaps make sure everyone can hear that dispersal order. The department was not really willing to go that far. The thing we were hearing at the time was case law doesn't currently say how they have to do certain things, or other departments aren't doing it. My pushback initially to them was San Diego can be a leader in this. So rather than waiting for other departments to decide something and then we follow it, I would rather San Diego be a little bit more aggressive and actually come up with policy that is helpful for these types of situations. So I think, perhaps with the new chief, that might be something we can re-examine, but go over. And then the languages, initially it was English and Spanish. The recommendation here was to add Vietnamese, Arabic, Somali, and Tagalog. So the recommendation is also those can be pre-recorded. So it's a more generic message, but that way everyone can kind of hear it and just play it over, their light bars, I guess. Again, the reasonable amount of time thing, that's something we've already asked, but the department's pushed back, but we can still bring that up. And there's a lot of questions about specifically the riot component. So I think what we're trying to do is get more definitions on that. One of the other things that
we're gonna have to wrap this up so we can have a little bit of discussion. Hang on.
And we can also put this up online so people can see these notes as well. But I think some of this, I would suggest our first step is we can go to the department, we can ask for clarification on some of those items, and then that we understand at least what their perspectives are, and then we can make our recommendations on how we would like to see the policy change. I think the other thing was munitions. My personal issue is I feel like if you have, I'm gonna go back a step. With the current use of force policy, it's really designed, I think, more for someone who is trying to not be arrested. So obviously, if you have someone who's tensing up and trying to get away from an officer, that's why I think the current use of force policy allows certain things to happen at active resistance. I think as we were saying earlier, if you have people that are sitting in the street or interlocking their arms, I personally don't believe that is a level of resistance that justifies a baton, a pepper spray, anything like that. Where currently the use of force procedure would allow that. And I think the intent is if you have someone who's being, peacefully sitting in the street, maybe, causing a nuisance, but not violating any, well, I guess not.
Commissioner Hilbert, we need to wrap this part up because we need to get a plan of action going.
So I'll just leave it at that. Those are my initial thoughts. I'll open up to the commission. I'm thinking what you do is go back to the department, ask them for clarification on those items. I can bring that back, and then we can make our official recommendations of how we'd like to see the policy change. With that, I'll open it up.
All right, we have only a few minutes because we do have a lot on the agenda. Commissioner Finch.
So I also got some feedback from community as well. Something, I know you lifted up definitions. People also, did you say what's the definition of violence? What's the definition of peaceful by SDPD? Okay, can you add definition of peaceful? And then for the media, we'd like to also add community members who are grassroots documentarians, podcasters, and folks who go live to be protected as well. And for First Amendment activities, we'd like to add explicitly, well, you already lifted up, but definitely adding actions that are critical of police, blockades,
and wheat pasting, encampments, and amplification of sound. Actions that are explicitly critical of police departments and law enforcement. Blockades. Wheat pasting. Encampments. And amplification of sound. Also asking about dispersal orders for folks who are deaf or hard of hearing. And then I have a last one, well, two last ones. The one around, I think folks with public comment, the community is telling us that they, don't want pepper spray or any of these munitions at protests. So I think we should tell them no more to those. And then is there anyone else, because we are running out of time on this topic, is there anyone else? Commissioner Mendoza.
I just want to suggest if we continue to get pushback on officer identification requirements, perhaps like a middle ground would be like first name and first initial of your last name, Daniel N. Just find the idea that just getting the number during like a chaotic protest is hard, so I feel like that could be a good middle ground. Try, see what they say.
Good idea. And okay, Commissioner Griffin Jones, and then we're going to go for an action plan. Also on their pre-planning, I've planned marches where I've explicitly asked the police not to come, and they still come. And that's a waste of San Diego's resources if I've been able, as a movement or as an event organizer, to show that I have adequately staffed, safety, and have backup plans. So I think that a pre-plan question should be, and we should be keeping records of the organizers refusing police involvement. Yeah, and I think that's different. All right, if there's any other ones, you can email. So we had planned to vote on this recommendation today. At this point, I don't believe that it's going to happen, but I also don't want to drag this on for meetings. Will you be able to, by the next meeting, get definitions and write up a new recommendation so we could just, so we can just vote on it and then forward it to the police department?
I will say yes, as long as the department responds rather quickly. But yeah, otherwise, if I can get a response within a week, I'll pull it together by the time we have our next amendment.
Okay, let's have Mr. Parker be our go-between now, because Dr. Scarborough used to be, and they only want one point of contact. It will be Mr. Parker. You can copy the cabinet just to keep us in the loop. Yes, Commissioner. I think we also heard from community today, and in some of my conversations as well, folks are asking for an explicit community meeting for this. I know that one of the community members said that after we get feedback from the department, having that. So I wanted to know if I could make a motion for that kind of workflow. You can always make a motion. We do have a lot of community meetings coming up that we have already voted in, including the pre-text stops, including special operations unit. It would have to be in line at this point. You may want to just rethink it. I would like to recommend that we go with these recommendations, see how the department takes them, and then we can relook at that and see if it's even worth it. Does that make sense? It does make sense, but I want, community members who do come and participate, I do want them to feel seen. Would like us coming back together, voting on it, and then Commissioner Hilbert getting a response from the police department. Then can we do a community meeting, bringing those responses to the community, and then get responses to the community, from the community, to be able to take back to PD. So when we get the responses back from the PD, we will present them at a meeting, and that's when the community is welcome to join us and give us feedback. Right now, we already have community meetings planned. We can include it in a meeting, just like we did today. Having a whole community meeting right now, we would have to plan that out. And right now, we're already planned out till the end of the year. So having said that, you're always welcome to make a motion. It will be not time sensitive because of our other plans. And we also have to vote to not take action on this one because we already have it in the agenda. So we have to do plan that. So thank you, Commissioner Benitez.
You might not thank me. I just have one comment, and I realize that it's hard to even say what's at the top of the priority list, and we have a lot on our agenda. I only want to say it's July. There will be an election in November, and I don't want to predict the future, but this will be a topic by then. And I think any community meeting, if we're going to have one, should happen before the election. I don't know how that happens in terms of scheduling, but if it's going to happen, it's got to happen before then.
I'd like to make a motion that we have a community meeting about the SDPD protest policy in October. Is there a second? Okay, discussion. I don't know that we can guarantee it for October. I would like to suggest you say sometime before the election, because I don't know what we have coming. We have a lot of other stuff that we have already scheduled. So I understand when the election. Yeah, I understand. The election would be preferable language if you're okay with that. Okay, is the commission okay with that? Do we have a consensus with the commission? Because I think it's an amendment to the motion. Is the commission okay with that in consensus? Okay, any more discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? I'm abstaining. All right, so it passes, so we will plan on that. All right, thank you. I move that we table the vote on policy recommendation to send to SDPD as noted in the agenda. Is there a second? Commissioner Hilbert. All right, any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention. All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you so much. Police Pursuit Ad Hoc Committee. Second vice chair case.
We had a meeting last night, and we're meeting again next Tuesday to come up with some recommendations for policy changes and training changes for the department. And we'll have a preliminary report for the commission that be considered at the next meeting, not voted on, but at least presented to you. It will not include much data analysis. I won't go into all the details, but for several reasons, the preliminary report will not include a data analysis, but our final report will include that.
Do we have any public comment on this item, Ms. Obi?
We have no in-person public comment. If you're joining us virtually and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand now using the Zoom raise hand feature. We have no virtual attendees. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion here? So next meeting, July 17th, we will have as second vice chair case said, the preliminary recommendation for the pursuit policy. Any discussion from the commissioners? Great, thank you. So we will move forward. Our community hearing on pretext stops. Let's be sure we get the word out to the community. We have these little flyers here. Reminder, it's August 7th, 2024 at 5 p.m. at the George L. Stevens Senior Center, which is operated by the Fourth District Seniors Resource Center. So let's get the word out. A high-level police, ranking police are going to be here to listen. We're hoping to get the chief. He's been invited. We hope to hear back soon. Is there any public comment on this item, Ms. Obi?
We have no in-person public. Oh, yes, we have one in-person public comment on this item. Ms. Samantha, you have 1 minute, thank you.
Regarding having a public engagement opportunity regarding the pretext stop issue, I think that's really important, and I would urge you to pull out all the stops on publicizing that event so that you have maximum turnout. We know that sometimes there can really be a challenge with getting the public engagement during the summer months as people are vacationing and such. But I think this is a very critical issue, particularly to under-resourced and underserved and minority communities. And I think that we should really make a grand effort at marketing that event.
Thank you. This concludes public comment in person. If you are joining us virtually and would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand now using the raise hand feature in the Zoom. This concludes public comment on this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, so any discussions about the pretext stop? Commissioner Bond here.
Yeah, you may remember a month or so ago, I initiated independent research on one of the pretext stop issues, which is the window tint. I'd asked for some support from the staff, but that was denied because inadequate staffing. So they renewed it now, so I can have something ready in advance of this meeting.
We have one of our paralegals is working on that, so can you send it again to Mr. Parker and Mr. Bennett and the cabinet? And we will give it to the paralegal who's compiling some of that. Thank you so much, Mr. Byer, Commissioner Byer, for remembering that. Okay, yes, Commissioner Griffin Jones.
I'd like to make a motion that we use resources to purchase Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and a billboard in the neighboring area to promote this pretextual stop hearing.
We're figuring out if we have the right to take a vote. Mr. Bennett, there's no vote action on this agenda. Do we have the right to do that?
Good afternoon, Commissioner and Honorable Chair. No, we really cannot, although I understand Commissioner Griffin Jones' comments. Any advertisement of the event should be done through the typical city means and through every aspect that the city advertises these types of events, the commission can use with or without a vote of the commission. So it doesn't mean you cannot go ahead and advertise the event. The other thing is you have community engagement, you have your website, you have other means that you can go ahead and target for purposes of putting the word out, and you don't need a vote of the commission to do that. The commission just needs to do what it's supposed to do in terms of publicizing this event and making sure that the public has full knowledge and information regarding it. And also, Mr. Parker, I just wanted to say, take this time just to welcome a great and tremendous leader, Paul Parker, who I work with at CLRB. The commission could not be in finer hands. And you are really, really in for a treat in terms of leadership and direction. And Mr. Parker is exactly what this commission needs. And so along those lines, he and I discussed also the fact that the notice of this hearing should be posted at the center where it's going to be far in advance of the hearing. Okay, so in all of these meetings, these public, you should use that forum also to make sure that you advertise or that you post the upcoming hearing. And that's totally consistent with the Brown Act, and I'm sure it's consistent with all city practices.
Thank you, and I want to welcome you back as well, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Parker has some comments.
What I can assure you is that myself and we're going to work to get the word out on August 7th. It's a critical meeting. We're going to exhaust every opportunity we have, publicize this, in the communities that we need to really get into and publicize this. I can guarantee you that. I know that she's already on top of it, so that's where we are. Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comments? I mean, excuse me, Commissioner discussion. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So we'll look forward to that. So now we are pleased to have one of my favorite people. The person who pretty much put us on the map. It took her about 8 years to get Measure B voted in by 75% of San Diegans. And she, actually, I should let Commissioner Malmet introduce her, but she is here to give the history of what led to this commission. Commissioner Malmet, I'm gonna let you introduce her. One quick second, check your emails if you have your computers, because our projector is down and Ms. Conde emailed the packet that was supposed to go up on the projector. So you should have it in your email. And if you don't have it right now, then you'll have it when you get home. Thank you.
So yes, we are very fortunate to have Andrea St. Julian here with us today. I don't know if you all remember all the details that have been in those training academies that have been created and were put together, but learning about the history of Measure B and law enforcement oversight's history in San Diego, specifically related to San Diego PD, is one of the she is free, that she's making it happen.
I have to acknowledge Women Occupy San Diego and Kate Levenday, who really started all this. And I also want to acknowledge Mid-City Can, who was also a fabulous partner. So I just had to start out with that. As soon as the PowerPoint comes out. I understand, although you all won't be able to see the PowerPoint, they'll be able to see it online.
Yeah, and if you're on the webinar, you'll see it.
Yeah. All right, so what I'd like to talk about today is the origins and purpose of the formation of the Commission on Police Practices. It certainly did not come out of thin air.
Can you hold that closer to your mouth?
Sure, is it on? So the initiative to create the commission, it was a total grassroots effort. As I said, it was started by Women Occupy San Diego. San Diegans for Justice came in later, and Mid-City Can was a fabulous partner, as were others. It started because the community was dissatisfied with the Citizens Review Board, which was the previous organization. The CPP was completely formed through community input. When I sat down to write the first draft of the charter amendment that would become Measure B and create this body, it was after speaking with dozens and dozens of people about what they want the commission to look like. It was also after we held many community exchanges to find out what the community wanted. Patrick, who was commission was an interpretation, documented much of what he said it was in this commission, and he has all of that online. And in the packet, you have a link to that documentation. If you have not taken a look at it, I would say that it is your best pathway to finding out what the community wanted. So why did the community want to change the community, or the citizens review board? By design, the old CRB lacked independence from the city and the police department. The CRB lacked power and it had a limited, and the CRB really lacked transparency and accountability. To change these things, the first thing we had to put into the charter amendment was to make the new commission independent. Okay. Now, earlier I had said that by design, this was meant to be dependent on the city and to lack independence. That was because the old CRB was in fact created by the police. That's not hyperbole. That is a fact. The police department itself wrote up the measure for the CRB. And that's why it was an organization that didn't fully meet the community's needs. Under the CRB, there were concerns that the city protected police from genuine community oversight. And there were also concerns that the city attorney had conflicts representing both the police and the CRB. And yes, you heard me correctly. The city attorney represented both the police department and the CRB. There was generally a feeling that the city attorney did everything he or she could to make sure that the CRB never did anything that would harm the police or the city. And based on those feelings, community members wanted a new commission. There we go. So what is this commission? And I think hopefully a lot of this stuff is referenced for you all, but just in case. It's good to keep in the forefront of your mind that this commission is a hybrid commission. Okay? It's a hybrid of commission. There are three models, generally speaking, of the oversight of police. That's the review model. That simply reviews investigations that the police have done. There is also an investigative model that independently investigates complaints. And then there's also an auditing monitoring model. Under the old CRB merely reviewed complaints against the police department. You, as commissioners in this new body, you are a hybrid of all three. You not only review, you independently investigate, and you have actually mandatory duties to audit and monitor the police, as well as some discretionary duties. And what's really important as a new commission is that you embrace all three models, okay? The old CRB was review, and it's kind of easy just to follow through with what the old CRB did and concentrate on review. In fact, review is probably the least important of all your important duties, right? Review is the least important. Okay? So when I say review is the least important, the mission really needs to look at the bigger picture, okay? If you put most of your energies into just review, you will not have any energy to do the higher level duties of investigating and also in auditing and monitoring the police department, okay? Independent investigation is necessary, but your mandatory, the cases where it's mandatory for you to investigate are really very few. You know, you only have a duty to investigate like two types of cases where there's a death, cases where there's a shooting. You then have discretion to investigate others if you believe that it's a case that's really important and needs a full investigation. So those are definitely important. And I think that are working your way toward fulfilling your duties of full investigations. But I think that most people know and understand who are in this area and who are experts in the area, that the auditing and monitoring duties and powers are the most important duties that this commission is going to have. Okay? If you look at investigations and reviews, what you're looking at is something that happened in the past, something that's already done, potentially a life lost, you know, and it's important to do that. But I think we might all agree that we would feel much better if that life had been lost. Okay? And that's when the auditing and monitoring function comes in. It is a prospective avenue to look at, not a retrospective. Okay? In auditing and monitoring, you want to get ahead of the curve. You want to have gathered data, analyze that data, look to see where there are problems, and come up with recommendations and policies that will prevent bad things from happening. That is your highest level. Okay? And the one thing you have to be so careful of is spending so much time and energy on review that you don't get to the higher level issues that are going to make the most profound changes. So, what's important is that everything that can be made public should be made public. And credit where credit is due. Praise from stronger. She said everything that can be made public must be made public. Okay. And it's not just because it's nice to have things that are public. It is because it is integral to the success of your work. Okay. If you are not as public and transparent as possible, the community will never trust you, ever trust you. You can do the most beautiful work in private, but the community still trusts you because they weren't able to see what you did or how you got there. Okay? So you have to be public. And that includes making CPP as public as we possibly can. And certainly you've just been forming, and it's really great that you have done that and had to have some privacy. That's important. But you have to remember always the default should and must be that the meetings are public. Otherwise, you will not be trusted. When you have private meetings, the community's default is going to be that you are hiding something, even if it's not true. Okay? The process that you go through in adjudicating and evaluating complaints and all your other issues really needs to be, and I will skip slides, but really needs to be public as well. For example, when you get in a complaint, there are a lot of decisions you have to make about it. First, you have to decide, is this a complaint that we can actually review or investigate? Because there's some types of complaints, the measure of the charter amendment says you can't, but you should be making a determination if you can or can't. Then after that, you have to decide, is it an investigation or discretionary? If it's discretionary, you're going to have to make that decision. Every single one of those decisions should be made public at the time, to the extent that you can make it public. Okay. That is gender trust. And it's also going to be an accountability feature because a community can say, you know what? You decided to only review this complaint instead of doing a discretionary investigation, but it's important enough that you actually investigate it, right? So give the community the opportunity to speak up and you allow them to keep you accountable, right? And those are just examples of what can and should do to keep your process transparent and allow public input. I need to go backward on the slide. I think we should go.
Yeah, you
Oh, can you go backward just one more slide? Thank you. Just backward on the slide. Okay. Oh, backward 2 slides. I know you've gone. Are we going? Okay, I need to go backward. Backward one more. Wow. Let's see, what? Yeah, there we go.
Oh.
And then, yeah, I think we're good now.
It's because it's delayed.
Okay.
It was a staffing.
Okay. Yeah, we're supposed to be on the public slide. Everything that can be made public should be made public. And the last thing about that is timely communication with the complainant and the public. Again, to the public about the process, what's happening, and even the fact that a complaint has been filed. Again, to the extent that you're allowed to make things public. You can redact things, you can do other things, but your default should be to find a way to make it public. And then the other thing is timely communications with the complainant. So many complainants under the old CRB were like, we have no idea what's going on. We were never told what was really happening with our complaint. At the end, after months and months and months, we got, one little short thing. I have no idea what happened. That is the kind of thing that alienates people. And that undercuts your effectiveness, okay? Next. Thank you. So, let's talk about things that are hidden. I think in one of the first meetings that you had, you have to be careful because there are things that are hidden from you, things you don't even know are happening. And they're undercutting what you do, right? So the first thing I want to talk about are complaints. And this happened in the process. Kate and I remember we were really surprised when we learned about this, but the police department categorizes complaints in different ways. And we knew about category 1 and category 2 complaints. And then we learned about these 2 other categories, one of which was miscellaneous complaints, and I can't remember the other one, Doug. Was it informational, miscellaneous, and was it internal? Okay. But there were 2 types of complaints that nobody even knew about. And that those 2 categories were approximately half of the categories that the police department was receiving. And nobody even knew they existed, let alone ever got a chance to see them, okay? So I don't even know if you all are receiving those types of complaints, or if you're only still receiving category 1 and category 2. What the miscellaneous and maybe internal complaints, I thought it was information complaints, but I don't know. But placed into the charter amendment, which I did not write in there, but was placed in there by the city after we finished it, was that the commission could not evaluate or investigate complaints where the complainant requested no investigation, where the complaints had no specific allegations, or where the complaints, or where the complaint where no police officer can be identified. Now, I'm not sure, but I'll bet dollars to donuts, you probably aren't getting those complaints. Okay? Right? And this is the problem. Yes, The charter amendment says you can't investigate those. But the first question is, who determines whether there are no specific allegations in that complaint? Who decides whether a police officer decides the complainant doesn't want an investigation? During this whole process, there was one woman who came to a city council meeting and said that there had been an abusive incident. She and her friends had called to make a complaint with the police department. The police officer who took the complaint wore down the complainant, saying, "This poor officer has a wife and children. You really don't want an investigation on this, do you?" And kept talking to her until she gave in and said, "Okay, I don't want an investigation." Informal, that's it. That's right. Miscellaneous or informal. Thank you, Doug. And I would be surprised if that's the only time that's ever happened, right? But it is a method by which the police department can say, "Oh, this is a complaint, but the complainant said we don't want to investigate it," all right? The police should not be making that determination. You should be looking at every single complaint and determining whether they fit into one of these three categories. So to do that, you have to be able to receive them, okay? So yeah, so please check out and see, you may be missing half of the complaints, even 5, okay? The reason why you have to have these complaints is even if you determine that it's within one of these 3 categories, you have to collect data and analyze that data about what's going on in the police department so you know what policies and recommendations to pursue. If you're not getting half of the complaints, you don't have the data on which to make policy recommendations. So that is, and I am sure that is not the only feature going on. But the one I want to let you all know about. And so generally, you're going to have to really dig to make sure that you really know and understand everything that's happening. Next slide. So, one huge key to effectiveness is going to be your staffing. And I know you all are just saying, hallelujah, staffing is on the way. I can say this, Paul Pucker and Dwayne Bennett are 2 of the best oversight individuals you will ever come across. They are magnificent. It is wonderful that you have both of them. They will support you in making sure that the work of the community gets done. So I think you all can embrace that grand good fortunes and go full steam ahead. So now with Paul on board, you can start bringing in staff. And you know this, I'm sure you can staff. I'm not telling you anything you're not already feeling. But I hate to put it this way, but I will. One of the problems with the old CRB was that they were so overloaded with make work that they didn't have the strength and ability and bandwidth to do the higher level work. Okay? The CRB didn't have staff, they didn't have any money. You know? I mean, we had commissioners, you know, Doug and Brandon probably told me, who were working 40 hours a month. You know, that is outrageous. It is not appropriate. You all are volunteers, and also the work was, again, done in such a way as to redirect those efforts from the work that really should have been done. And you all are going to have to really watch out for that. So you have got to be well staffed so that you can avoid burnout. Okay? You cannot get burned out. If you do, you will default to doing lower level work instead of doing the really important higher level work. The knowledge and credibility that experts will bring on staff will be tremendous, okay? And I'll talk about this a little later, but expertise is important to help you get the recommendations that you make put in place, okay? One of your key staff is really independent counsel. I cannot emphasize how important it is to have good counsel. And thank goodness you have the best counsel that you could imagine. I don't know if you all truly understand how excellent Dwayne Bennett is. You will never find anyone with the qualifications and the dedication and the brilliance of that man. Okay? Dwayne and Paul are going to be a team that can't be better. And next slide, please. So I want to drill down a little bit more on counsel, on your attorney, because it's important. Each of you should feel free to have a relationship with Dwayne. Don't let anybody on this commission be a gatekeeper, keep you away from him. Okay? That is one of the things that keeps you powerless. Knowledge is power. And if you don't have your questions answered as to what you can do, what you can't do, and what is possible, and if there is someone keeping that knowledge from you, you will be afraid to act. Dwayne has always been open to speaking with commissioners, and don't let anyone tell you any differently. Now, I have to be honest with you, I totally trust everyone here that that's not going to happen. But things change, who knows what's going to happen in the future. But if you have questions that you don't understand, that are not being answered here in your meetings, if you really feel you need to understand a finer point of the law, do not be put off. Make sure you get that answer, okay? Also, legal counsel is an advocate. You are not commissioners just to follow through what you are told to do. That is the last thing you are here for, okay? You are here to advocate to create the commission that the community wanted, okay? You have to envision the biggest and best community commission possible, and you have to make sure that's possible, okay? You do not ask merely, you know, Dwayne, Paul, what can we do? What can we do? Can we do this? Can we not do this? You might ask that question, but that's not where it stops. What you do is you decide, what do we need to do as a commission? What do we need to do? And then you go to Paul and go to Dwayne, how do we make this happen? Okay? Don't let anybody tell you, well, we can't do that. Oh, I'm sorry, you misunderstood me. I wanted to know how can we find a way to do this? Okay? That's your charge, and that is your duty, okay? So I gotta hit this point because I don't even know. I know how this happened and I'll explain it, but there seems to be some confusion about whether your legal counsel needs to be a full-time position or not, okay? It was not envisioned as a full-time position, but a well-meaning city council member said, oh, why don't y'all make that a full-time position? Let me give you the case why, in most circumstances, you should not have a full-time position, okay? Dwayne is not going to tell you this, but if you wanted to hire someone with his stature and his experience, you'd have to come up with about $400,000. Is that in your budget? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. You can't afford a really excellent attorney full-time. What can you afford? 175? You know? And just to let you know, I'm an attorney. Okay? That's about what a first or second year out of law school makes. Okay? All right? So when you're talking about, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the case, but perseverating on getting an in-house counsel is basically perseverating on getting you less qualified counsel. And that's really going to handicap you. Okay? Someone who's only been practicing 2 or 3 years wouldn't even begin to touch the hem of Dwayne's experience. Okay? So maybe at some point, it might come about that you want a full-time counsel, and that might make sense. But from my perspective, it certainly doesn't make sense at this point. But it is your decision, not mine. And you have to really think through why are you going to choose what you decide to choose, right? What is the benefit of it? You know. Next slide. So you all are in control, and I want you all to know. Okay? You don't work for Paul. You don't work for Dwayne. You don't work for Gloria. You all work for the community, and you all make the decisions. Okay? And please don't ever fall into a relationship where you feel like you are subordinate to the people that, in fact, you should be directing. Because that's another little trick that the city likes to use. It tells you, you can do this, you can't do that. It gets people to tell you you can't do this and can't do that. It keeps you away from information by separating you from people who have the knowledge that you need to do the work of the people. And I hope Gloria doesn't mind telling the story. Paul was there at the time too. We were having, the CPP was having a community meeting. And it was about the new executive director. And one gentleman stood up and said that he and his husband had submitted a complaint weeks ago. It had been, I think, in January of this year, when the full commission was had been appointed. And he gotten back this letter that said that they don't review these kind of complaints. Nobody on the commission had ever even seen that complaint. And not only had they not seen it, the letter was wrong. This, and again, the administrative person who did it, I am sure, had been not. But unbeknownst to any of you, complaints were being turned away that you should have been evaluated. Okay? And the commission's name was not in the community because of that. Because I am sure that's not the only letter that went out. I'm sure there were many, many. And commissioners didn't understand why aren't more community members coming to the meetings? Why? Because unbeknownst to any of you, there was someone directing an administrative assistant to turn away complaints. Okay? So what was being kept from you is how staff was being directed and what staff was doing. Okay? You've got to be totally on top of that. You've got to know all of the processes and procedures that are going on. And I'm not talking just about Gloria or Dennis or Doug, the executives. Each and every one of you has got to know what's going on, because there will always be a pull to go ahead and do things in a way that take authority away from you. But you all have all the authority and you need to keep it. So I've talked about the commission and don't have gatekeepers. You all don't allow any gatekeepers. You have access to everything. And again, be careful about the subtle efforts to control the commission, because they're there. Let's be really clear, okay? It didn't take us, what, 8, 9 years to get that thing on the ballot and 3 years to get the ordinance passed because we didn't have opposition. Okay? They fought us every step of the way, and they're fighting you. You just may not see it. Can we have the next slide? Okay. Partnering with the community is another key to effectiveness. The commission has to gain the community's trust to be effective, not because it's nice, not because it's the right thing to do. You will not be effective if you do not gain the community's trust. Okay, now I think everybody knows and understands that the recommendations that you come up with are recommendations, right? Well, we don't have to take them, right? Okay, so how do you make sure that the police feel compelled to take your well-reasoned, legitimate recommendation? You get community support, right? You get the community in there saying, the commission did this fabulous job. They've made these recommendations that we as a community 100% agree with. Mr. Mayor, Chief of Police, you need to do this. Unless you are hand in hand with the community, your recommendations are not going to be implemented. Okay? Next slide, please. Okay. So I maybe went a little too far with the picture on this slide. I don't need to compare you with gods, but you have to understand your power to create this commission, your power and your duty to create what this commission is, right? Those two pieces of paper, the charter amendment and the new ordinance, they are not what's going to create the commission. You are going to create this commission, right? You are not simply following the words that are on those two pieces of paper. You're taking those words, you're taking the directives of the community and understanding the language of those documents through what you learn from the community. And then you are working to create this commission, okay? You have to continue to consult the community, okay? And also, one of the handouts that I gave you was the voters ordinance that San Diegans for Justice created as a sample ordinance for the CPP, and we did give that to the city. There are portions of it that did not find its way into the ordinance. The reason why I give this to you is because it more fully incorporates a lot of what the community was looking for, but that was, and again, it's not in the ordinance. Now, also, let me be clear, a lot of the things that we incorporated in the voters ordinance, you don't actually need to have an ordinance to do it yourself, okay? But I put the ordinance in there because if you review it, it'll give you a better understanding of, oh, I might want to consider incorporating some of this in the commission. You may not, it's up to you, it's your decision. The bottom line is, what do you think is going to make this commission more effective? And before the voters ordinance gives you some things to start, to start your mind kind of thinking about that. Because the bottom line is, if there's something that you need, if there's a procedure or process that you need or want, you need to do it. You need to create it yourself. And if for some reason someone says, well, gosh, you really need to put that in the ordinance, then you get Dwayne and Paul to go on your behalf at city council to get city council to put it in the ordinance. That's how much creation you have to do. You are not bound by that ordinance because you can get it amended. And if you need to get it amended, then you do it. Next slide, please.
Yeah, perfect. It's time for questions.
Perfect, yes.
All right, does anyone have a question for Miss St. Julian? It was,
I gave you so much information.
it was so in-depth. No one has questions. Anybody? All right, well, I'm sorry. Hi, Commissioner Flores.
So. Thank you. So it's good to see you, by the way. I was wondering, so you talked about how the city could be working against us in certain respects, and we might not know. So let's say file systems and ways that records are kept, and if they're sent to us in a way that makes us do the dirty, makes us do the work, or we have to hire data analysts, or we have to spend our calls parsing through that data when it should have been done in the first place. Things like that. Is that something that you've experienced?
I think that that's actually probably a better question for maybe, Doug, who had, has looked through documents. I can say that from my conversations with former, CRB members, getting the documents and getting all the documents you need and getting them in the proper format was always a problem, and, that is ridiculous. If you look in the voters ordinance that I gave you, there is a very detailed series of requirements on obtaining documents. But of course, that wasn't put in the ordinance by the city. If you feel if you're having problems getting the documents you need in the manner that you need them, then you need to put your heads together and, talk to Dwayne and Paul and say, what do we need to get these documents in a more appropriate manner? And, try to work it out with the police department. I'm sure, Dwayne and Paul are very nice people, and I'm sure they'll work very well with the police department. But if it can't be resolved, then, you're gonna have to try to get an ordinance passed. You may even have to take it to court. And don't be afraid of that. Listen, the police department, they'll say in a minute, oh, we're gonna sue you. Oh, we're gonna sue you. Never be afraid of that.
I was just gonna say, we've gotten some pushback already as far as complete access, so we're gonna bring that up again with the new police chief. They're saying that there's not enough security to give us access to certain things. I understand. So it's not an issue we're going to let drop.
Yeah.
The main reason I bring it up is I'm sure what Doug has told you with the data we're seeing with our committee and how it should be in a format where it's accessible in a database, where we have columns of information and we're able to access that. But what we're seeing is that we have to dive into subfolders and subfolders on subfolders to figure out whether a document is even readable. And then from there, parse through the information and have Dwayne's intern, spend their time on that, when that should be something that the police department has already done.
There are some concerns with the way that the information was delivered, which we will bring up when we meet with the police chief. The cabinet meets with Paul at the end of July. We have our bi-monthly meetings. There are some issues that have come up that have been shared. Yes, as you know from your committee, ad hoc committee. Yeah, there were some concerns about the format.
Sorry, just for the record, we have, no public comment in person or virtually.
I was gonna come to that, so thank you.
But the first thing I'm gonna say is you should not be parsing through that data. You should have staff to format that data and put it in the appropriate format before you even look at it, okay? That is a classic example of your energies being diverted to something you shouldn't be wasting your energy on.
Wait, I need to interrupt on that one. We didn't have the staff at the time.
No, I understand. I'm not, I'm just saying it's an example, and
Yes, absolutely 100%.
Yeah, no, I know, but that's something to be mindful of in the future. Now, also, I don't know if you all have started looking at this, but you are mandated by the Charter Amendment to audit the police department's compliance with information gathering pursuant to state statute. Now, I don't know if you've all even started to look at that yet, but you're required to do that, okay? And so you should, that might be, I don't know, because I'm not sure what data you're talking about, but are they in compliance with the statutes? And so, and I haven't raised, there are a lot of mandatory issues or a few mandatory issues that you all, because of staffing haven't been able to get to. But that auditing thing is huge. And, you know, and I can't repeat it often enough. It's okay if you sue the police department. It's not a big deal. You know, it's not a big deal. I know Paul's looking at me like, Andre, you're not speaking for me. But
Me, and I will, as the executive director, do everything I can to ensure that we have access to what we need access to, and the steps that we need to get that access. I mean, I've done the exact same thing in the county. I've been the thorn in the side. We'll continue to do that here, to do everything we can to get the information for this commission to fulfill its mission.
Yeah.
So because of that issue, that glaring issue of data, we are put in a position where we're rushing afield to a report that doesn't have the substantiated information to make actual decisions that will affect the community. And if we're wrong, then the community is not going to trust us in this. It breaks that other part that you're talking about, which I think that deadline for the actual police pursuit reports should be pushed back. And it's not something that we can do now, or we shouldn't do now, because we don't have a data person to review all of that information.
I mean, if you don't mind me giving a suggestion, okay? Putting out a report is important, but you don't want to put out the wrong information. Maybe the report to concentrate on the fact that you're not getting the appropriate data. Report that to the community, okay?
We are running out of time, so we do need to stay on schedule. Do we have any more questions? And can we make them brief, my friend? Thank you.
I won't have a backstory in my life. I'll leave that later. I did have concerns about these the miscellaneous and the informal. Are we getting those? Okay, so should I make I would like to make a motion that we get those.
You don't need to, hang on a second. Jen, Paul is aware of it, and we are going to pursue that as part of it. Please don't leave him. As part of that, it does not require a motion. It's the law in the ordinance. That's something we're going to pursue. Paul is taking Mr. Parker is taking copious notes, so it doesn't need a motion.
And then I would just like to, you know, really like thank the community for like being here with us as they're seeing what the police department and people who don't want us to really live our mission as a commission and that we're going through. Something also that's kind of been an annoying thing. I don't know if someone already lifted up, is sometimes the IA reports are a little like not complete. And I wanted to just take that invitation to let members of the community know that that's something that we're going through, and that's something that we're putting action on, but that is a wild thing.
Can I just give one suggestion on that too? So I think somewhere along the way, people got confused about investigations and investigators. Like you either have a peer review or a full-on investigation. There is nothing that says that you can't get your own investigator to supplement an IA's investigation. If there's something that does not feel right to you about it, get an investigator to fill out that report. You know, and I know I'm speaking a little simplistically on this one, but I think you get my drift on it. Don't think of either a full investigation or a review. Don't think of it as two binary things that can't be touched. An investigator, you know, you can do whatever you want with your investigators.
But right now, because we don't have those procedures that are passed by the city council and gone through meet and confer, we cannot do those investigations.
Yeah.
So I'd like to remind everyone and Andrea knows this, we are in the foundation build stage. We are not to a place where we want to be, where I wanted to be a year ago, and Mr. Bennett was like, it's gonna take some time, because what we want to do is build it right. We don't want to build it rushed. We want to build it right for the future commissioners who come along.
And if I may say one last thing, if there's no more questions, you all have been doing a really good job. You know, I mean, you really have. You know, after all these years it's gone that we worked on this, and to see that you all are now where you are, I thank each and every one of you. I really, you're doing a good job. Keep at it. I know you're gonna get there. It just takes a long time. I mean, you're doing the foundation work. And that's what you have to do right now.
We have one more question for Commissioner Molnat.
This is a minutia question. And you mentioned how the voter ordinance, not everything got into the final ordinance. Do you happen to have what those things are? So I don't have to go and compare the two by myself?
You know, I actually don't have a strikeout copy of those. And I gave the voters ordinance more just for you to kind of look through to see if there's anything that sparks, you know, your creativity of, because I'll name two things that I think are really things that I think you could, at least one of them you can do on your own. And Doug and I have talked about this, and we both agree that this is something important. There are police officers who would like to be able to file complaints with the CPP. But because of their position as a police officer, it makes it very difficult for them to do so. You should have a special unit and a special set of procedures within the CPP specifically for police officers who want to make a complaint. Now, there are some landmines you'd have to go through and certain things that would have to be done because police officers first are required to report it to their superior. And you'd have to get some changes and amendments made to that policy. For example, that they can either report it to their superior or to the CPP. But, you know, that's something you can do without ones, right? Another one is the quality assurance program. The policies that the police department puts into place, they never have to go back and look and see if they were effective. They keep no metrics about it. They do nothing. They can just put a policy in place. Oh yeah, we fixed that problem because we put this policy in place. Any of you who've ever worked for a business, you know you'd be laughed out of the room if you said that. Quality assurance and checking and making sure that the processes you put in place are in fact effective at addressing the problem is routine in the business world. But it doesn't exist in the San Diego Police Department. You know? Know you work on that? Yeah. So.
I just want to thank you on behalf of the commission for everything you've done to get us here and for spending your time tonight to give us a briefing that will be used also for new commissioners as they come along to give them a history on video. So I personally want to thank you and really appreciate your time and your years working on this. So let's give Ms. St. Julian a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we are going to go into closed session. And so let's start to do that, and then we will start to go into that. So give us 5 minutes to get into closed session. Oh, yeah. We have that. Okay, Mr. Bennett, will you lead us into closed session?
Yes, Okay, there'll be a recommended closed session under Government Code Section 54-957 to discuss cases that are confidential under Penal Code Sections 832.5 through 832.8. That will be the recommendation.
All right, we are now back in open session, a little bit late, 7:39. Mr. Bennett, will you please lead us out of closed session?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. The commission met in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54-957 to discuss confidential cases under California Penal Code Section 832.5 through 832.8. The commission gave direction. There is no reportable action. That will conclude my closed session report.
Now, while we don't have time, we do have a couple announcements that we really do need to make. A quick question, next meeting, July 17th, is at the Mountain View Recreation Center. You will get the address and the agenda. It is not in this room, so please keep an eye on where it is. Same time, same day, just a different location. So please don't show up here, we won't be here. All right, if everyone got badges to get into our beautiful offices downtown, we are missing Commissioner Justice, Griffin Jones, Diaz, Hanson, and Chatsky, because the machine broke. So they're gonna get you those badges by the next meeting, so our apologies. Next, we are going to, the cabinet and executive directors and interim executive director are going to appear before the Public Safety Committee next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. You can welcome to tune in online. Welcome to join us down at City Hall. I can save everything else for next time, except that I want to give a huge thank you to Dr. Scarborough and the wonderful staff for putting together a fabulous recognition event. Many of you came, it was beautiful. And we have bulletproof vests that you can now wear in a ride-along. The staff will, if you need information, talk to the staff. Thanks again to the staff. Yes, Commissioner.
Very quickly, the presentation we had today and much of what we discussed since we were founded was about getting staff on board so we can do the work that we need to do. Can we add to our agenda a report on the status of our staff so that every meeting, both we and the public will be able to see where we are with hiring staff and producing the work that we're doing?
And the next agenda and attempt to add it to each agenda, just so you know, we are really tight because we're trying to get so much done, but I will definitely add it to the next agenda and then we'll see how it goes from there. That's a wonderful suggestion. Thank you. Commissioner Griffin Jones, I see you took the mic. Commissioner Byer.
First, ordinance specifically says we do have the authority for any matter to the grand jury, DA, or other governmental agency authorized by law to investigate. So we do have that authority. It's specific in the ordinance. Secondly,
I'm gonna have Mr. Parker talk to Mr. Bennett about that and see about following up on that.
reassuring you that that's, secondly, we got an email from the chief investigator today entitled Communication with IA regarding cases. And I think that email should be subject to discussion of the entire commission, maybe the next meeting, if we could set a few minutes for that, please.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, did you ask that? Oh, someone say something.
I don't know what to do to balance our restrictions on time in terms of all the things that we're trying to do and keeping us all adequately informed about everything that's going on. And I'm also aware that the three of you are also volunteers and it's taking an enormous amount of time. But it seems that we regularly leave meetings with, they'll look into that, we'll take care of that, and there's not follow-up communication. And so I want a cabinet report at every meeting, and I want an executive director's report at every meeting. And I don't know how we fit this in. I realize I'm creating a problem, but I'm aware that we walk away and we handed things off to you. And it's not that I don't trust you, but I feel like the communication follow-up isn't there. I don't know how to fix the problem in time. It could be a written report, maybe like in a consent agenda item or something like that, and any commission member can request that it be brought into discussion, like if there's, you see what I mean? If you, just an idea.
That's a great idea, and we can keep it short and still inform you. But as far as an email, I was thinking email too, but we want the public to know as well. So that would preclude that. All right. No, did you have something to say? Okay. All right, we will add those to the agenda. Anybody else? All right, we are concluding this meeting at 7:44. Thank you so much. Everyone have a happy 4th, and thank you again. Bye.